Let's go!
Welcome into Behind the Brand podcast. I'm Adam Hayes. Over here to my right is Bob Payton, my co-host. Today, our guest is Kevin Lingg with Loaded Dough Cookie. Welcome in.
Welcome.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate you having me.
So you weren't always in the cookie business. What did you do? How did you get there?
Oh, how long you got?
We got as long as
We
you
could
want.
go get the cookies you brought and just eat them while you're describing it. That'd be, give you time, but yeah.
Nobody could hear what he's saying because we're crunching so loud. It's so good.
Well, thank you. I started my career really as an environmental health and safety manager and working in automotive manufacturing really. So started out after I left Ball State where you and I were at the same time,
right?
Yeah.
Didn't know each other.
Really?
But yeah.
Were you in the
time.
College of Business too?
I don't think so. No.
I don't think so.
It was like an environmental science something.
No. It was natural resources and environmental management. It was some sort of environmental management.
Where were a majority
business.
of your classes? Which buildings, do you
I
remember?
don't even remember. I let that go.
It did have a reputation as a party school. That's all I remember.
Yes.
I have no idea what I took and what I majored in, but it was good.
I was there. I know that.
Well, yeah, and I didn't really have I wouldn't say I had the typical college experience because I had my daughter when I was a sophomore in college.
Okay.
So pretty much after that point drove back and forth every day until I finished my career. So I was the one that set up my classes to be as efficient as possible so that I could still work.
Yeah.
So I only did Tuesdays and I did Tuesday, Thursday classes. And then I had a night Tuesday and a night Thursday class. That way I could get a full 15 credit hours every semester on 2 days per week.
Wow.
And then I could work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and sometimes weekends. So
Right.
that was my college experience for the most part.
So non-traditional.
Very non-traditional. A lot of driving.
Probably a lot less expensive.
Yeah,
Right?
it
I mean,
was.
you already had housing, right? So,
Yeah.
Yeah. I was up at 6 and home at about 11 at night.
Gas
So,
was
Wow.
still cheap in the early 90s.
Yeah.
it's true.
so after school, I went to work at a plating company doing some like chemical titration stuff in the background to make sure our plating tanks were up to concentration. So that's no fun to talk about. And then I went into what I would really say my career was an environmental health and safety manager for about 15 years across a few different companies. And then while I was at a company called Dresser, they were purchased by General Electric. And so when GE bought us, it was like a whole world opened up of like, what else you want to do? And I was at a point in my life in my 30s then where I was like, I want to do some new things. And I was getting more curious about entrepreneurship, about starting something of my own. And so the new plant manager that came in was like, hey, we could use somebody that they would take over lean manufacturing for us. So it's kind of difficult when you feel like you're a little bit of an expert in your field for 15 years, and then you think about jumping into something you know nothing about. So, the competence is dropped to almost nothing. And so confidence goes with it, and you're low. And everyone that knows what you do well now goes, I don't know if he knows what he's doing. And what I knew about...
But they didn't either. Right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think I'm a lifelong learner type person. I'm always curious. I want to learn more. I want to learn about more things. So I think that's what helped me. And I was like, yeah, this sounds good. I was traveling every other week of my life at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And so this was a way to kind of keep it home in one location and learn some new skills. And so I just did it. And that was scary. I mean, it's a transition for any of you out there that have taken a complete pivot into something that you knew you were not an expert at anymore. And I did it. I jumped into that. I learned a lot. And that led 18 months later to running actually a small part of the business. I say small. It was a $6 million aftermarket business with 9 employees, and they needed somebody to run that. So I was like my first P&L.
right.
And it was a chance to learn about more things in business and finance. And I was getting more interested in those things in business then. So that was fun. Learned a lot. Did that. Got my master's through IU at the same time. And then I started the cookie business as a side hustle because I wanted to start something. And I didn't know what, but I knew I wanted to start something. So I just kind of opened my brain up to just whatever. And I started walking through stores and looking in all the aisles and keeping my notes app on my phone full of thoughts, and then watching Shark Tank, and my favorite is The Profit with Marcus Lemonis, and reading Inc. magazine and Fast Company. And I was just started like, then
absorbing.
Absorbing as much as possible. And I just got more and more into it. And I was reading books like Scaling Up and others, and getting excited about like this new world of what I want to do. And I did that for months, and I couldn't find something that was intriguing to me. And then me and my wife were flipping through channels. We happened to see these cookies on TV, and it was Bobby Flay Throwdown show.
Yeah.
And this was really the first moment that I didn't think about it as a business, but this is what led to it. We were watching that show, and he was trying to beat someone else at their own game. And he had interviewed these women in New York City at Levain Bakery, and I do triathlons. And so they had a bakery, and they were training for an Ironman. So that gave them the idea to create a cookie that had like 1,000 calories in it, so that they had enough to like,
Boost.
train, right? Like enough calories to train. And that's the best calories, right? Sugar and chocolate. That's the best
Run
tasting.
some more.
Right? Best tasting, not nutrition.
So I just got absorbed into the episode because I had so many things that resonated with me, not cookies at the time, really just the business, and that they did triathlons, and it was cool to see the story. And anyway, their cookies were obviously voted way better than his, so he got his butt beat in that show. But it got me interested in like talking to my wife, like, let's take the kids to New York City. I like New York City. We've been 6 times now, I think. Wow. We go every 2 or 3 years. So much changes all the time there that you can see almost a new place every time you go. And we love the pizza and the cookies and the bagels, and we just walk and eat and see the sights. And we went on purpose to go to Levain Bakery and try these cookies, because we live in Centerville, Indiana at the time. And there's no cookies. So we went on the trip, took the kids. Their friends are in Florida. We're getting, snowed on in New York at the time, but it was still a memorable trip for everybody. The cookies were amazing. I came home and thought, how do I learn to make these here, since I can't buy them? They weren't shipping them. And so I found a bunch of copycat recipes on their website, and I tried. My research brain goes into find out how to make these, and everybody had different opinions. And so I took kind of the most common denominator from all of the forums and built a recipe from it, and it didn't work.
It didn't work.
It did.
I love that.
It didn't
work.
It didn't work. I mean, their cookies look like biscuits, like thick, like 6 ounce big. Wow. This is 2014, so keep in mind that crumble didn't exist. Right, this was before like cookies. The cupcake craze was probably happening at the time, right? And now that's died off. But the cookies, these huge cookies, and they were great, but I just couldn't make it that big and thick. And I was trying to find how they did it, and it didn't turn out the same. But I still took them to my class, and my professor at IU knew I was like thinking about a business, and she's like, just do this. This is great.
Right.
And
it works. Right.
And so I thought, all right, let me think about it. I mean, it didn't turn out like theirs, so I wasn't really copying them in a way like I wanted to.
But you created yours.
But I created mine. And everybody loved them. And I still lived in Centerville. There's nowhere to really sell
So how
them.
close to that original that you made, that you brought into your master's class, how close to that is the cookie today?
Today, yeah.
The base is the same.
Really?
Like, yeah, the combination of flour and all the other stuff, it's all the same. I would say I've added new flavors. I would say I've changed, like the chocolate chip was just a regular chocolate chip at the time. Yeah. And I've learned, like, I like a little bit of flaky sea salt on top. It's a great balance with the sugar.
Yep.
And then by accident, when me and my wife were doing, so there was nowhere to really sell them in Centerville, right? But if anybody knows Centerville, Indiana, there is a huge candle company that's right on the highway. It's called Warm Glow.
Yeah.
And a lot of people go to Warm Glow and get all kinds of things, but they sell a lot of candles. And once a year, they had this fall event where it was almost like a farmer's market for 2 days.
Right.
And they put up all these tents. And I got introduced to the lady, Jackie, and she said, hey, we'd love to have you set up a tent. No one sells cookies at this event, and that'd be good for all the people that are here. So I'm like, cool, how many do I make? And I took 10% of the amount of people that said they were coming on Facebook.
Right.
And I just thought I'll make one cookie for that number. And it was 700, I think, which I'd never done before.
That's a lot of cookies, right?
I'm doing this out of my house.
Right.
With
How long did it take you to bake
one
this?
oven,
Yeah.
one tray at a time, 1 dozen at a time, 700 and some cookies. And we didn't have enough room
What's
in our
the bake
fridge.
time?
The bake time's about 18 minutes on that at 350.
Wow.
So yeah, let's just call it every 20 minutes I was putting a new one in. So 3 dozen an hour. Okay, so this thing started on Saturday morning. And but prior to that, I got to make the dough. It's a process, so I do like 3 days ahead of time at least. So I make the dough one day. I do 3-ounce dough balls the next day out of that dough, and then they're ready to bake the next day. So it kind of gives the chemistry time to work. I think it was Tuesday night, me and my wife, I got all the ingredients. Our kitchen was just covered. I set them all up. I'm an operations guy, so of course I had everything sorted nice, everything ready to go. She had her job, I had my job, and this is how it all worked together. She would do that part of it, and I would do this part of it. We basically had worked most of the food out of our fridge so that we had space.
Right.
So by the time we were done, we had almost no food in our fridge and freezer, and it was all cookie dough ready to be baked. And then the event came, and my parents came up. And we set up, and I got up early at like 4 in the morning and baked like 6 dozen.
Right.
And I just had no clue like what I would sell. So I baked 6 dozen to start, and we take them up there, and it opens at 9, and by 9:30 they're half gone.
Wow.
And I hadn't even thought about this part, but I'm like, I better go back to the house.
Right.
I got to start baking. So I went back to the house and I started baking, and they stayed up there for the next day and a half. And we texted back and forth what flavors I needed to do next. And got football on the TV while I'm baking cookies, and I'd put a tray in. When I had enough cookies, I would go drive them. It was 5 minutes away. So I was like, I got just enough time to safely like leave the house while they're cooking. And I would run up there with like 6 dozen, drop them off, come back.
A 15-minute clock, right?
Yeah. And then I would keep like doing that for a day and a half.
How many
And
cookies do you think you sold at that event?
we sold a little over 700.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think at the time,
So your estimate was pretty close.
Yeah, we
pretty
sold out. So it was a 2-day event. We sold out about 4 o'clock on the second day. So maybe a few hours before it was over.
Wow.
So it was good. That was fun and hard and taught us a lot.
Right.
And one of the things I learned about that, sorry to go back to why the cookie changed a little, it was only in the aesthetics really. I had no containers big enough for all this dough I was making. So I had to buy these big, I would say big containers, and I'd make 3 or 4 batches. At the time I was using a 3-quart mixer. Okay. So if anybody knows, it's a bowl about this big.
Yeah.
And I'm making batches in that. Okay.
Wasn't even the kitchen maid, right, or whatever.
My mom got me a 6-quart like the next year for Christmas.
Right.
So I got to double my batch size. And then now I have a 20. So that's just working just perfect. So now I went from a 3 to a 20. But anyway, I was putting dough in this big container. So then when I took it out, I thought I can't easily get like these handfuls off of it like I could in the smaller containers. So I grabbed a big knife and I just started cutting chunks of dough off so that I could handle it better. And when I started forming the dough, all of a sudden these little chocolate flecks were all over the cookie. And I thought, well, that just looks better. It looks more artisanal, like or inviting. It just was a cooler looking cookie than just straight chocolate in a flour cookie. So it just looked better, and that was a cool, happy accident. And now I always do that. So now I chop all the dough, all the chocolate chip dough.
Interesting.
So it really hasn't changed that much, though. I always wanted to have a lot more toppings in a cookie than what I could buy. And so when you buy a package of a recipe on a package of chocolate chips or whatever, it says put 12 ounces in because that's the size of the bag.
Right.
So
how convenient.
I put 18 ounces in, or whatever. I just want to make sure there's like at least 50% more.
Yeah.
I want a better ratio of toppings to flour.
So how many years has that been since you had that event?
That was 2014.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So now we're talking almost going on 12 years.
That's a lot of cookies.
It's been fun. So I kept the whole, I kept it a side hustle, and it was meant to be just that, just fun, creative outlet for somebody that's not really that creative. And just have a business of my own.
Sure.
And learn like all the little steps of starting a business, from setting it up properly, making it an LLC, all those things, and then doing my own bookkeeping and all that stuff, and setting up a payment system and all that stuff is fun to me. So I know some people are like, I don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
But I'm wired that I love that stuff.
You're a process guy.
You guys know, I don't like sales and marketing. I like the operation and finance side of the business and just the execution. That's the funnest part to me, optimizing. And I just kept working at GE, and I love my job at GE. And that's what really supported my family anyway. And the cookies were fun. And then GE sold, and I got done with my master's, and another company came in, and I took a different role in that company that allowed me to work from home. And my son had just graduated from high school, so both kids were out of the house, and I took a role where I could move to Indianapolis, where there was just more.
Yeah,
we were 42 years old, so it was like there's more to do, and there was just a lot more stuff. So it's a great move, obviously, for the cookie business too. Just a lot more places to get them to people.
Yeah.
And I kept it a side hustle and worked that job. And then when COVID hit, I lost my job. We get old and expensive, and so when it comes time for those business decisions, you start to become one on the whiteboard there that might go. And so, but it was fine. I think ego, if I want to throw ego out there, got in the way after I lost my job, because
that's a huge deal.
I never thought of myself as somebody. I always thought of ego as sort of a negative thing, but I mean, we just all have an ego in some way, and it doesn't mean it's negative. It's what I think we tell ourselves who we are and what we're worth and what we know, and there's probably more to it than that. But it's all I knew was what I had done this whole 22 years of my career was get up every day, go to work, make stuff better, and manage a team. And that's just what I knew. But when I lost my job, I immediately started looking for another one, Right. And I spent some time looking and talking to people here. I didn't have a network here. I basically went from Connorsville, Centerville, to working from home in Indianapolis and not meeting people, just my work people. So I didn't have a network. And my friend introduced me to a recruiter that led me to more and more and more and more recruiters and people. And anyway, I did eventually take a job with a venture capital backed startup here in Indianapolis for about 18 months. And they were scaling. What was fun was I went from a big corporate sort of GE, right? Like one of the largest, 400,000 people, to thinking about during that COVID time, learning about EOS, for any of those that know what that is, the entrepreneurial operating system, started to I was like, this is cool. This is something that I could use my entire 20-some career, years in manufacturing and help other people scale their companies. But part of it was you had to market yourself and go get work.
Right.
And I didn't like that.
Nobody liked, only a few like sales.
I don't know how to do that. Yeah. Right. I was always the guy that just made whatever somebody sold. So I had no experience really selling. I know we all kind of have experience selling ourselves in interviews and so forth, but I had no experience going out and meeting people, building business and selling it. So anyway, that was intimidating to me. It did not bring me energy. And I try to focus on what brings me energy. Like where am I going and why do I like this? So I really pay attention to that. So I loved EOS, but going out and becoming an implementer or a coach was not really something I really thought hard to do. I kept going back to finding a job, and I did. And I found a job at Market Wagon, which is a great company. And they were, they were a smaller business at the time, but COVID had helped them really start to blow up at the time because we delivered a farmer's market experience to your house instead of you having to go. And that was important during COVID. So it was really fun. We doubled the business in about a year and a half, but 2022 was another tough year. It was just a tough year in the market. Venture capital was pulling back a little. And so the business, hurt a little as well. And so it was fun to scale for 18 months, but then I lost that role too. They had to scale back. And I just thought, let's just see where cookies can go.
Right.
When I moved here, I had a neighbor that owned a gym downtown, and he said, "Hey, can I buy some cookies for my clients?" Which I thought was brilliant. Like, that's brilliant.
You're in a gym. Hang on a second.
Here's a gift from me for you being my client, and also you're going to want to work that off.
Right.
So
Come on back tomorrow.
That's right.
So you're going to sign up for the next year. It was awesome. But one of his clients owned Kincaid's Meat Market in Broad Ripple. And he was like, "Hey, I think these cookies would sell well at my butcher shop."
Right on the counter, right? Yeah.
So I didn't have to sell, really. It was more like my neighbor was like, "Can I buy some cookies for my clients?" Yes. Yep. And then he got them and said, "Would you sell these here?" And that was the sales process. So I went down to him, told him how much they would be and how much I thought he should sell them for. And we worked out how I'm going to deliver them. And it went from there. And then they set up a second location. So I got a second location. And then a friend of theirs knew the people at Giacomo. And so I talked to him on the phone and he's like, "Yeah, let's try it." So then I'm in 3 Giacomos. And so learning a little bit more about just meeting people and talking to people, but I'm sort of an introvert. So sales is like, takes a lot of courage for me. And
yeah, but what you just described though, and I'll talk a little bit, because I'm the same way. I'm an introvert. Everybody says, "No, you're not," and I am.
Yeah.
It takes work, right, in your head. You can do it, but mentally it's draining. But yet what you just described is how I tell introverts to sell. Stop selling.
Yeah.
Just go talk to people that allow them to sell for you. And then the rest of it takes care of itself. And you're just training an external sales force. You just happen to be delivering the cookies to them, but let them do it. So that's great.
You're right. Back to the ego thing. I think it was just that I thought I do bigger things than this small little cookie business in my kitchen. Yeah. And the sales thing is like, I don't know how to sell. That's scary. Like my only sales experience was, most of us probably, is like a car salesman, and it's never been a fun experience. Right. And I didn't want to, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to come across that way. I don't like being pressured. I don't want to be asked those things. And then I know it's a big deal. A lot of entrepreneurs, at first at least, struggle to even ask, what should I price my stuff? And and
am I worth that much?
Am I worth it? And, all those things are tough things to think about, and I hate to raise my prices too, but sometimes, as we know, inflation happens. And
we were just talking about chocolate, right?
We were just talking about chocolate. Yeah. And that's a major ingredient in my cookies. And the price of that has gone up every single year because of bad weather in the region, or bugs, or who knows, maybe tariffs. I don't know. But all these things happen. And so you kind of have to pass it on because even all of us as consumers are getting inflation and just everything else we go by. So my wife has a business as well. She walks dogs, and I'm like, every year you need to think about look at your competition, and it's how, stay in line with their prices. Cause if not, but she's like, "I don't want to raise the prices on," and I get it. It's hard to say that, but you just got to say, look, if you don't, then look, the price of everything going up and yours doesn't, then we'll eat that.
That's correct.
Everybody has to figure out how to do it and get comfortable with it. And it's not fun, but the ego thing is just, I at first thought I do bigger things than that.
The cookies,
yeah, I've been trained. I've spent 20 some years. I know what they paid me, all those things. That's what I'm used to.
Yes.
And so I don't know that I want to go down that journey of taking something from almost zero sales to what I would need to make to do that. But, do I need to make that? And that was the real thing in my head. And eventually I just found, from losing my job 3 times in my career for just things that happened in the world, that I kind of didn't want to be reliant on anyone else for that sort of thing in the future. So I just thought, I got a good thing here. It's grown over time without a lot of hardcore sales, just talking to some people, and one person to another just leads to, every once in a while I would find somebody I thought, I think it would be good to sell them there. I might as well just make a 6-pack and go see if it works. And I don't have to say much, but I tell everybody, the first time I ever tried to sell on purpose, because remember, I had Kincaid's, and then they grew. And so I had some clients that really wasn't like me going to a stranger and saying, "Would you buy the cookies?" Right. The first time was another butcher shop, because it did so well at the one. I thought, well, I'll go to this other one. And so I thought about, what am I going to say? Who do I need to ask for? This was all intimidating to me. And so I went to the butcher shop and I asked for the person, and I got to talk to the buyer. And I just said, I have a cookie company. I already sell them at another butcher shop, a competitor
Your
of yours.
competitor.
And they sell really well at the point of sale, and they just do great. And they already had like another cookie there that wasn't like mine, but they sell stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I said, I do weddings and grad parties and stuff too, but I sell them wholesale mainly. And she took them and she said, this is great. And I'll let you know. And before I got back to my house, 10 minutes later, I had an email, and it was her saying, oh my God, the owner loves the chocolate chip, and I love this other one. And it was all the questions, right? Like, what flavors do you have? How much are they? Where do you make them? All that sort of stuff. And
What's the shelf life?
Shelf life, yeah, all the important stuff. The scary thing at the time was I made them out of my house. And so
cottage.
And
right?
so, but I also had rented a kitchen in Carmel before. There was a kitchen you could rent there, and it's no longer there, but I could, and I had done it there. So I thought, if I'm going to get the order, I'll just make them there and I'll drop them off. So I want to do it right. I just didn't have another option at the time. And anyway, and then she never responded.
You got ghosted.
It was my first ghosting.
Ego blow.
Yeah,
right?
like, see, I can't do this. I can't do it. It was my first time ever getting the courage to go ask.
It really had
someone.
nothing to do with you.
No.
You know?
I assume it did not.
It didn't.
I followed up once a week for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I got no response. And so, anyway, I kind of thought I'm 0 for 1 on sales now. So maybe I shouldn't do this, right?
Well, sometimes the universe has a unique way of giving you things that you need and not giving you things you don't need.
Yes.
You're right.
Sometimes it's a good thing the door doesn't open.
Yes.
Could have been a blessing.
Yes.
So I just moved on, right? And I continued to get some other stuff. And I would use that tactic again later when I got more courage to do it again. But a lady down the street from where I live opened up a charcuterie board business and a meal prep business. Sprig and Plate. Molly's awesome. I kind of was looking on her website. Somebody said, hey, they're opening that kitchen for charcuterie. Maybe you could rent from her. And I was looking at a church down the street that had a huge kitchen and they never use it. I was thinking, who has kitchens that they don't use? Right. And it's churches and schools.
Yeah.
Usually have a big investment in that. And so I thought, what churches? And another guy I networked with said, I go to this church and they have a huge kitchen, so I'll connect you with the person. And so I had some good conversations with them, but they eventually said the board didn't want to do that because I was for-profit.
Commercial enterprise,
Yeah, and so they didn't want to do it. And so in the meantime, I had gone to Molly's Kitchen, and I had delivered cookies downtown. I came back and thought, I'll make a 6-pack for her and drop them off and see if I could sell to her, because she doesn't have a dessert on her website. She makes all these charcuterie boards, but no dessert.
Yeah.
And so I just made a 6-pack. I pulled up, and they weren't open. And she just happened to walk out. So it looked like I was probably stalking her. So I get out of my car and I'm like, hi. And anyway, I said, hey, I have a cookie company, and a client of mine in my neighborhood said she uses your services, and I thought this would be a good fit. And I said, here's some cookies. I'd love for you to try them and see what you think. And she was gluten-free.
You're like,
and I didn't have any gluten-free cookies in there. It's like, I didn't think.
Strike one.
Yeah, here I am, 0 for 2 now.
Right.
But the people that work with her are not all gluten-free. So they tried them, and she emailed me, and she said, hey, I'd love to put these on my menu. And I did. I remember I didn't go in her kitchen, and I wasn't looking to rent her kitchen. I wanted to, but I didn't even know what it was like. I just wanted to see if I could get on her menu first. And so anyway, she gave me an order the next week, and I went in and dropped the cookies off, and that was the first time I walked in, and I was like, ooh, this is awesome. There's plenty of room for me here. This would be a great fit if I could rent from her, but I was working with the church at the time. So anyway, my wife picked up an order that day for a friend in the neighborhood and that's when Molly stopped her and said, where's Kevin make the cookies at? And she was trained to not say our house.
Right.
She said, well, we're looking at this church down the street. Right. And then she said, if he's interested in renting here, I'd love to talk to him. So then I went in and talked to her, and we worked it out, and her business was completely viable without me.
Right.
But she's like, I got space, and this could be a good combo. Yeah. And I've been there for 2 years.
Wow.
It's been awesome. So the cookie business has just continued to grow. And even with the EOS stuff, I did get into a little bit of that, as Adam's aware. And I'm not an EOS implementer, but I like to help on the fractional integrator side, doing the weekly sort of L10 meetings and stuff like that. So I still do that, but it's funny when I started trying to like do more of that in networking, and people always ask, that's what we naturally do. What do you do?
Which answer, right?
I say, like, if you know what EOS is, I do fractional integrator work to help these companies. And then I also have a cookie business. And then there's no more talking about what EOS is.
It's all cookies.
It's cookies. Tell me about cookies. Tell me how you do it. Where are you at? All these things. So I've just learned everybody they're curious and they like to talk about cookies. So it kind of like markets itself in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
Anyway, that's a long answer. So.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, one, I want you to come up to Purdue and talk to my students, because the story you just went through has so many, what I would call typical things that you may not think are typical. That learning cycles, failure, just you walk to a door and nobody, people say no and it goes dark. All
Identity
those things,
crisis.
right? Correct. Yeah. What do you call that? It's not ego. Imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. All those things are all wrapped up into that. Right. And here we are, still chugging along. And, my logo was Rolls-Royce, yours was GE. Right. And I always joke that when that logo gets ripped off, a piece of you goes away.
Yeah.
Right. All of a sudden you're really tested of who you are, and you've gone through all that. So it's fantastic. So.
Yeah. And I was networking a lot with people. I mean, I was on a couple of Zoom. It was COVID. So there's a lot of Zoom networking groups that I was getting in, and a lot of people that had lost their jobs and were looking for what they're doing next.
Yep.
I always had the cookie business as like this thing in the background that just was fun to keep doing. And, I saw most people didn't have anything like that. It was just they had their job and then their job was gone. And that's all they did for a long time. And I was probably the youngest person in that group. I mean, many of them were in their 50s and 60s. And they were still like what I'm going to do next. And it's tough times. I mean, it was really tough. Yeah. And then it's gotten a little better, but it was tough then. And you're right. Sometimes your identity, and that was maybe the ego thing too, where I'm just like, this is what I do. This is who I am. And I've learned to just let that go.
Yes.
And that's not easy,
it's hard.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
To say, I know I learned those skills and I got paid that much money to use those skills and I did a great job. But maybe now it's time for this, and this is fun, and this feeds my creative side, and I enjoy learning more and more about business and how to make this business better, and it's created a whole new community for me too.
Yeah,
I mean, I've met new people and built new relationships, which is what life is all about.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I would say they're even more interesting people. That sounds awful, but I call it in a corporate setting, people are kind of in buckets. They're just, they're doing their thing. It's perfectly fine. It's not meant to be demeaning, but they just kind of have one thing to do. The people we meet, they're Swiss Army knives sometimes, right? Yeah. And their stories are just fascinating, right? So I'm with you.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think obviously everybody has a story, but sometimes those stories, no one ever gets to those stories when you're in a work environment,
Right.
You're doing your work and you're in meetings all the time or whatever you're doing. And sometimes we probably don't take enough time to really get to know the person and what's going on with them.
Agree.
But everybody's got stuff, but we do learn. It does seem like at least entrepreneurial people seem to have they've had to wear so many hats that they have a huge array of skills.
Sure.
That they've had to do.
Yeah.
But when you are in a large corporate environment, you typically are a specialist, not a generalist. And so
you don't have to fix your IT. You hit a button, right? It shows up, right? I remember that. Yeah.
File a ticket.
Correct.
It's a lot of resources, and that's great, but you learn to become a lot more resourceful when you're alone.
Yeah.
So one of the things we've learned about you is you're very curious, you're a lifelong learner. What are some other hobbies that really inspire you outside of work?
Outside of cookies?
Yeah. Outside cookiedom.
Outside cookies. Yeah, nowadays, my life is so different now than it was back then. The cookie business takes, I kind of like it where it's at. I'm going to say something that a lot of people probably like.
Yeah, nobody listens.
Nobody says that. It's probably rare. I'm not trying to scale the cookie business, and you guys know that.
Sure.
It's really a lifestyle business. It's exactly like kind of the size I like it. I'm I'm pretty much, besides a couple hours of volunteering that I get from my wife and a friend, I spend about 20 hours a week on it, depending on the season.
Right.
And
Sure.
the rest of the time, I like the EOS stuff, so I do some of that. And then I have a podcast as well called Fire Your Boss with our friend Jim.
Jim, yeah.
And so we love to interview people that have taken the leap to start their own thing. And we love to hear what they've learned about themselves along the way. And hopefully that inspires other people to consider it. So I love doing that. And me and Jim may make that bigger than it is, but we do about one interview a month now. And that's been fun. And I think we might do more with that. So I love that. And then, I'm 50 now. So you start thinking about...
I'm 9.5 years ahead of you. So trust me, I know.
Well, health, like I have the time now to really like spend more time on that. And I just happen to love doing it. So I know not everybody loves to go run or lift weights or whatever. I've always liked it. And so I pretty much spend 6 to 7 days a week doing
something,
at least 30 to 60 minutes of a workout. So I love doing that. Pickleball was huge for me for a couple of years. Yeah. So we talked about this before we started the show, but I used to do it a lot. Yeah. I loved it. Like it took me by storm, just like a lot of people. It's competitive, you're getting sweaty. It's a good workout. And socially, I met a lot of people, a lot of really great people going to, play games and stuff. So it was great. I mean, I probably even got a couple of cookie clients out of it, not trying to, but it just naturally happens when you socially, connect with people. And so I did that, but then it started hurting my body in different ways than it should have. Like, I started getting some like tendonitis aches. And other things. So I was just probably helping orthopedics with their businesses rather than me.
I think Ortho Indy created pickleball. I really do. It's like, it's a great way to get business.
Absolutely it is.
They're doing well. Yeah.
It's putting their doctors' kids through college.
So what's 26 look like for you?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm still excited about the cookie business. I still want to keep that going. And I don't know if I want to, I have ideas that I will sit and stew on for a long time, and I'll bounce things off of people like you guys that I know have experiences. Like, well, have you done that? What do you think about that? I've thought about, should I create a course or not? Do people really want to learn how to make these cookies? Is that something I want to do? I don't know. Ooh. I keep that as a thought. Not necessarily for the revenue, but just for like getting it out there and creating some content around the business. Again, not to grow it, just to like add another layer of, let me show you how to do it or how this works. I know most people don't want to have all those ingredients at their house and make cookies, but some people might. But still, I thought about that. Yeah. You have a thought of should I write a book or have a cookbook or anything cookie related or not cookie related. I think those are things I still wonder about, but haven't seriously thought about.
Yeah.
So for now, I'm just keeping it with I like the Fire Your Boss podcast.
Sure.
I love the cookies. I love helping with the EOS stuff as an integrator and working out and staying in shape. That's all I'm focused on right now. But I could see maybe the cookie business adding another sort of flavor, not of cookies, but of maybe a course or something.
Anything? Yeah.
Cool. Possibly.
Nice.
Possibly.
Definite maybe.
Well, you mentioned it. I think you mentioned it, right? You've spent 23 years or 13 years working on the song you played this morning, right?
Yes.
And you mentioned the same thing of just kind of keep gestating.
Yeah.
That just keep writing it down, right? It'll eventually come to you, right? And just keep building it, right?
The earnest effort.
Correct.
I like to, I tell my son, even like when we're chatting about stuff, like what brings you, like when you think about it, like what gets you energized? It really, to me, that's worked best for me. If I start thinking about one of those new roles I told you about, where I was thinking about lean manufacturing or jumping into the new, the job across the street with the new P&L, and like, oh my God, it's scary because I don't know much about it. And I know they know I don't know anything about it. So then you got to get over the fact that, like, do I care as much about what they think about, or that what they think, or that I'm just going to learn enough to figure it out eventually. again, confidence is low, but once you start learning and growing and showing that you're putting in the time to do something, if it brings you energy, you will put in the time because you're curious, and then you keep being curious. So I try to find those things. And, at one point I was, investing. We've talked about investing in the past outside of the show, of course, but my friend said something about options trading, and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. So I started to learn, and it was interesting for a minute.
Right.
And then it just, I kind of like noticed I wasn't getting excited about it. Right. I didn't jump out of bed thinking, oh, I can't wait to go like put my options trading plan together today. I watched videos, I did learn some things, but like anything, that's how I attack it. I'm just kind of like, that sounds interesting, let's go see. And then it might be a week or a month later, and I'm like, kind of not still excited about it. Sure. So I move on to something else until I find the thing. And right now it's the podcast, and it's the cookies, and working out and trying to stay healthy, and
nice,
and hanging out with you guys.
Well done.
That's awesome. We always enjoy it.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on.
That was awesome.
It's a great story.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And thanks for feedback on my cookies.
Oh, man. They're really good.
Don't buy them. We want them all.
That's right. But thanks for coming.
Thanks, dude.
All right.
Appreciate it.